It was just after 7 p.m. when Marie Thompson pushed open the grand glass doors of the Silvercrest Resort and Spa. The wind outside had started howling, catching the edges of her long raincoat as she stepped inside. Water clung to her coat like second skin, and her brown leather shoes left faint squeaking marks on the pristine marble floor as she approached the front desk. The hotel lobby was magnificent. Vast marble pillars reached up toward the gold leaf ceiling. A fire danced in the hearth across the room, casting a warm glow over couples seated on velvet couches sipping wine. A jazz trio played softly in the background, almost lost beneath the low murmur of clinking glasses and murmured conversations. Marie looked small among it all. Her coat was faded, her face bare of makeup. She carried no suitcase, only a leather purse that had clearly seen better days. Her silver-streaked brown hair was pulled into a loose, practical bun. She looked like a woman who didn't expect the world to cater to her, but who had decided just this once to ask something of it. At the reception desk, a young woman named Claudia barely looked up from her monitor. She was striking, flawless red lipstick, every hair of her slick bun held by invisible forces, and a slim name tag glinting in the warm light. "Good evening," Marie said kindly, offering a small, nervous smile. "I'd like a room for the night, please." Claudia tapped on her keyboard. "We're fully booked." Marie blinked, surprised. "Oh, I actually called earlier today. Someone told me you had rooms. I didn't book in advance because I wasn't sure I'd make it here in time." Claudia gave a tight, polite smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Well, the schedule changes by the minute, ma'am. There's a tech conference in town, and we're quite full. Perhaps check the lodge at Rainier Hills?" Marie furrowed her brow. "That's an hour away. I don't mind the cost. I can pay the full rate." Claudia's eyes darted up for the first time, now examining Marie properly, from her thrift store, coat to the cracked leather purse, to the shoes that hadn't been polished in years. "I'm sorry," she said, her tone slow and condescending, "but our rooms start at $1,600 a night. I'm afraid we don't offer hourly or budget accommodations." Marie stood a little straighter. "I didn't ask for a discount. I asked for a room." A pause. Claudia's eyes narrowed slightly. "Unfortunately, we have no availability, and there's a dress code for guests entering our main lounge. Evening wear is preferred." Marie turned her head, glancing past Claudia toward the lounge. A group of teenagers in hoodies and graphic tees were eating complimentary macarons off a large tray, giggling loudly. One of them had rainbow-colored hair and no shoes. "Interesting dress code," Marie said softly. Claudia stiffened. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave the lobby if you're not a registered guest." From behind Marie, a tall man in a navy blue suit watched the exchange with narrowed eyes. He said nothing at first, but his jaw tightened. He recognized the name on her ID as she pulled it out to check something. The face, too, sparked something old in his memory, but he held his tongue. Marie's smile had vanished now. Without another word, she turned and walked back out into the stormy night. The wind greeted her with a sharp slap as she walked briskly across the lot to her old station wagon. She sat inside the car for a while, engine off, shivering slightly as the cold crept in. Rain pattered on the windshield like 1,000 tiny judgments. She sat motionless, hands in her lap. Then slowly, she whispered to herself, "Maybe I should have just called him." Her voice was tired, "but I wanted to see it for myself. I wanted to see what he built." Her eyes wandered to the glowing lights of the resort. She remembered when it was just an idea, a napkin sketch in a cafe booth. Back then, Jared had been nothing more than a dreamer with calloused hands and a beat-up Ford pickup. Marie had met him at a lumberyard when he was working freelance construction jobs, and she was waitressing nearby while patching barns for neighbors on the weekends. Their first date wasn't dinner. It was fixing a leaky roof together. They fell in love not over roses, but over splinters and mismatched coffee mugs. They'd married under a cedar tree behind her uncle's farm, both barefoot and laughing, surrounded by wildflowers and friends, who brought their own lawn chairs. In their early years, they scraped by. A mobile home with a leaky roof, a generator that kicked out in storms. But they were happy. Then Jared struck gold, figuratively speaking. Investors liked his idea of eco-luxury. Hotels built into nature rather than against it, with recycled materials, native landscaping, and spa treatments using local herbs. It was new, it was clean, and it sold. The first hotel opened in Bend, then Whistler, then Big Sur. Then came the interviews, the magazine spreads. Jared was on TV, shaking hands with celebrities. He offered to bring her into the spotlight. She declined. Marie never liked the cameras. She didn't like cities either. She stayed in Oregon, still patching roofs and cooking her own dinner. They never divorced, but they drifted. Phone calls got shorter, visits less frequent. Now, a decade later, she had finally come to see what he built, and they'd turned her. Away at the door, back inside the Silvercrest lobby, Daniel Royce, the general manager, stood by the edge of the bar, phone pressed to his ear. "Get me Jared," he said quietly. "Urgent." Jared Westwood was boarding a jet in Los Angeles when his assistant approached with a phone. "She's where?" he asked, freezing halfway up the stairs. "She tried to check in." He turned on his heel. "Tell the pilot to wait." 2 hours. Later, a black sedan pulled up outside a small cafe, lit by a flickering neon sign. Jared stepped out, umbrella in hand, his tailored suit catching the rain. He opened the door, and there she was. Marie, sitting at a corner table with a paper, cup of tea, staring out at the storm. He didn't say her name. He just looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time in years. She looked up. Her eyes were tired but steady. "I heard you were in town," he said quietly. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want a welcome parade," she replied. "Come. I wanted to see it without your name on it. I wanted to see what you became." He sat down opposite her, slowly, and they saw someone too rich to recognize his own wife. Jared's face fell. "God, Marie." "I'm not angry. I just didn't expect the hotel to treat me like I was lost, like I didn't belong. You belonged in that lobby more than anyone in it," he said, voice breaking. She studied him for a moment. "Do you still keep the suite with the mountain view?" "The penthouse?" he asked, blinking. "Of course." "Then let's see if it's as good as the brochure says." When they re-entered the hotel an hour later, the double-glass doors were pulled open by 2 nervous bellhops. Marie walked first. Behind her, Jared Westwood, the billionaire founder himself, had one hand on her shoulder. Every head turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Claudia at the front desk looked up and turned ashen. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's—" Jared walked directly to her desk. "I believe my wife came in earlier this evening," he said. "And you refused her a room?" Claudia stammered, lips trembling. I didn't know. She didn't say she didn't have to," Jared said. "Every guest deserves respect, not judgment based on appearances. That's supposed to be the heart of this place." "I'm so sorry, Mr. Westwood," Claudia said, eyes pleading. "Not me," he said. "You owe that apology to her." Claudia turned to Marie. Her eyes were full of panic and shame. "Mrs. Westwood, I'm deeply sorry. I misjudged you. It won't happen again." Marie looked her in the eyes. "I hope you remember this moment, Claudia," she said gently. "Because someday, someone else will walk in looking like I did, and they might own the building next door." Claudia nodded, too ashamed to speak. Jared offered Marie his arm. "Shall we?" They rode the elevator up to the penthouse in silence. When the doors opened, Marie stepped inside and walked slowly to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The mountain stood still in the distance, its peak wrapped in silver clouds. She stood there for a long time, watching. "You know," she said finally, "I didn't come to test anyone. I just wanted to see what you'd built. I needed to know." If you were still in there, under all the gold trim and the hand-polished glass. Jared moved to stand beside her. And what do you see now? She turned to him. I see someone who still remembers how to apologize. That counts. He reached for her hand. I missed you. I missed me too, she said with a soft smile. Maybe we can fix that. 6 months later, Silvercrest launched a new guest policy and training initiative. The guest you don't recognize might be the one you should respect the most. Marie became quietly involved behind the scenes, championing a program that offered free stays to single mothers, displaced veterans, and recovering survivors in need of a place to rest. Claudia stayed on, but she changed. She learned names. She asked about people's stories. And in the penthouse suite, a fresh vase of wildflowers always sat by the window, because sometimes the woman who was denied a room becomes the reason the whole house learns what hospitality truly means.